January of the year 630, Muhammad set out for Mecca at the head of an army of 10,000. As the Muslims approached the holy city, Meccan people made no attempt to resist. It was clear that the old gods of the Quraysh were powerless in the face of Islam. The Prophet had no desire for blood. He issued an amnesty as a symbol of his wish to unite all people as the children of one God. The only victims he sought remained sitting in the Kaaba. The Prophet entered the holy structure and proceeded to lead the destruction of all 365 idols as he recited the verse, "The truth has arrived and vanquished falsehood." Muhammad had validated his vision and proclaimed to the world the force and vitality of Islam. By the time of his death in June 632, the Prophet had brought peace to Arabia. He had transformed a religion of many gods into a powerful monotheism based on a moral and ethical guide for daily living. But Muhammad's death was actually the birth of the great age of Islam. Within 100 years, the words of the Prophet spread from Arabia to the world. As Arab culture mixed with Greek and Byzantine learning, an era of Islamic enlightenment brought enormous advances in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, literature, and architecture.
Who would have thought, today, let alone then, that a man who is described as born an orphan into a divided Arabian society, illiterate, a caravan manager, would create a religious tradition that within 100 years of his death, its physical presence would spill out of Arabia, go all the way to North Africa, and all the way over to India.
And he always warned his followers not to make him into a Jesus, not ever to say that he was divine. He was just an ordinary man, he said.
The fact that he led what we might call a normal life, I think, makes him very appealing to many Muslims, to most Muslims perhaps. That he married, that he had children. These are all things, I think, that make him very approachable as a model for people.
So many centuries after it ended, Muhammad's life remains the foundation of the faith he founded. Today, it is the fastest growing religion on earth. As these worshippers respond to the ancient call for prayer, each looks to the Prophet's example to provide peace and serenity in their daily lives. The ancient Kaaba remains in Mecca, and millions of pilgrims arrive each year to retrace the footsteps of the Prophet. The site of Muhammad's ascension on his winged creature to meet God is today the Mosque of the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Muhammad's gateway to heaven has tragically become the focus of enmity and hatred between two peoples who trace their ancestry to the same beginnings. Some Muslims who partake of violence use the words of a compassionate man to legitimize their acts of cruelty and hatred. They cite verses of the Quran as inspiration for their monstrous ambitions.
Since September the 11th, we've heard Osama bin Laden reciting some really blood-curdling verses from the Quran. But what bin Laden fails to do is to mention or recite the verses that in every case succeed these ferocious verses, which say, "But forgiveness is better."
If one wants to take one part of the story, one of the chapters, and develop a conception of the Prophet upon that single chapter, well, of course it's going to be very distorted, and the Prophet is going to be understood as a man of violence and a man of hate. What a tragedy, and what a corruption.
When people commit violence and injustice in the name of Islam, they are committing violence and injustice against Muhammad and God.
For peace to come to a troubled world, Muslim and non-Muslim alike will have to find a source of trust and acceptance of their common goals. One such source could be a better understanding of the life of Muhammad. Cleansed of the selfish motives that some terrorists wish to give them, the words of the Prophet remain to offer hope and optimism to a troubled world.
Whosoever killeth a human being, it shall be as if he had killed all mankind.
بكت عيني على ذنبي وما لاقيت من كربي بكت عيني على ذنبي وما لاقيت من كربي يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله 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 يا طه يا محمد يا حبيب الله أنت رسول الله أنت حبيبنا وسيدنا أنت خير خلق الله يا أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين.
This is the news in summary with me, Mohammed Njai. On the sidelines of the 23rd African Union Summit held in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, Sheikh Professor Alhaji Dr. Yahya A.J.J. Jammeh, held several meetings with leaders across the continent on areas of mutual interest. Among them was the newly elected President of Egypt, the Mauritanian President, and the Ethiopian Prime Minister, amongst others. The Ministry of Health and Social Welfare has taken delivery of medical equipment donated by the President, His Excellency Sir Professor Alhaji Dr. Yahya A.J.J. Jammeh. The equipment was handed to the Health Ministry by the Vice President and Minister of Women's Affairs, Aja Dr. Aissatou Njai Sedi, on behalf of the Gambian leader. The Managing Director of the country's energy giant, NAWEC, Ibrahim Asanyang, has assured the public of a return to adequate supply of electricity, particularly in the holy month of Ramadan, as engineers of the company work round the clock to complete maintenance work on one of its most reliable generators in Kotu. The NAWEC Managing Director was speaking to our GRTS reporter after a tour of the company's main power stations in Kotu and Brikama. The Vision Development Foundation is intensifying its road rehabilitation exercise in the Kombos. This time around, the group focused its attention on Fajikunda, Talinding, and Ibo Town. And to news outside the Gambia, environmental experts gathered in Kenya for a United Nations meeting have frowned at the way the East African nation is handling the issue of endangered species such as rhinos and elephants, and a deadly attack in Egypt's volatile Sinai region have raised more questions about Egypt's fragile security situation. A centenary celebration in Bosnia-Herzegovina is rekindling old memories of the past, but not all Bosnians are thinking along the same lines. And in India, there is little of survivors after a 12-story building collapsed and killed 10 people. Well, that was all in this edition of the News in Summary. Have a pleasant morning from GRTS.